Have you ever felt the attraction shift without a single conversation explaining why? One day, the connection feels natural, effortless. The next, something invisible seems to stand between you, even though nothing wrong has happened. She's still kind, still present, still says the right things, yet the energy is different. Compliments land flatter. Touch feels more distant, and you're left wondering how something so strong could change without a clear reason. You replay your actions, searching for the moment you missed, because surely attraction doesn't just fade on its own. Most men are taught that attraction is about doing the right things, saying the right words, showing enough effort, avoiding mistakes. So when it shifts, the instinct is to fix, explain, or try harder. But that response often deepens the gap instead of closing it. What almost no one tells you is that attraction isn't governed by logic or intention. It's shaped by subtler forces, often unspoken, sometimes unconscious, and rarely admitted out loud. This video won't give you tricks or guarantees. It will help you see the mechanism underneath attraction, so you can finally understand what's really been controlling the dynamic. There is a paradox that many men have experienced, but rarely feel comfortable saying out loud. The more you care, the more you try, the more you want to do everything right, the more attraction seems to move in the opposite direction of what you expect. Sometimes it even quietly fades. Not because you are bad, not because you do not love enough, but because attraction, from the very beginning, does not operate the way men are taught to believe it does. We grow up with a fairly simple blueprint. If you are kind enough, caring enough, present enough, attraction will grow. If you sacrifice more, the relationship will deepen. But reality is more complicated than that. There are men who do nothing especially impressive, yet still maintain steady respect and attraction. And there are men who do everything by the book, only to find themselves chasing the other person's emotional state. The issue is not a single behavior, it is something harder to see. The psychological position you unknowingly place yourself in within the relationship. Women rarely say this directly, not because they are trying to hide anything, but because most attraction operates on a subconscious level. It is not decided by statements like, "You are so good to me," or "I know you really love me." Attraction responds to far subtler signals: how you maintain your own rhythm of life, how grounded you remain when distance appears, and how you do not diminish yourself just to preserve connection. Most men do not lose attraction all at once. They lose it gradually, in very small moments. When they over-explain their good intentions, when they place her emotions above their own boundaries, when they try to fix the mood instead of allowing silence to exist. Each time, there is no major argument, no drama, just a very slight shift in how she perceives them. And the most dangerous part is not that she changes. It is that the man does not realize he is trading his psychological position for temporary reassurance. This video is not meant to make you suspicious of women, and it is not meant to turn you cold or manipulative. This is the Femina mind perspective, a way of observing attraction not through emotion, but through behavioral structure. Not to blame anyone, but to help you keep your self-respect while understanding what is actually happening. Because when you truly understand how attraction works, you realize something important. Loving more is not always better. Trying harder is not always right. Sometimes, the moment you become most attractive is the moment you stop trying to be chosen. In the next section, we will move into specific patterns, small, everyday signs that quietly determine whether attraction is growing or fading. If you have ever found yourself asking, "I do not understand what I did wrong, even though I did nothing extreme," leave a simple comment, "Noticed." Just so you know this, many other men have stood in this exact place before they were able to see the bigger picture. And from here, we begin naming those patterns. Before attraction clearly collapses, it usually shifts very subtly. Not through words, but through small behavioral adjustments, subtle enough to overlook, yet consistent enough to form a pattern. This is where many men say a familiar line, "I noticed this happening, but I did not think it mattered." This is where we begin. Pattern 1. Attraction increases when she senses you are not trying to earn it. There are phases when you feel more relaxed. You do not text constantly. You do not try to impress. You do not revolve your schedule around her reactions. And in those moments, she becomes more proactive. She checks in more. She wants to be closer to you. Attraction responds positively when there is no sense of emotional debt. When she does not feel like you are investing in order to receive something back, the brain reads it as, "This person is okay with himself." When they see this working, they do the opposite. They try to hold on to that state through effort, more attention, more presence, more proving. And attraction pulls back again. Do not adjust your behavior to maintain a good feeling. Maintain your own rhythm of life consistently, not to create an effect, but because it is your true center. If you have noticed this paradox before, leave a comment. Noticed. Pattern 2. Attraction decreases when you over-explain yourself. You explain why you replied late, why you felt down, why you cared, why you had no bad intentions. Each explanation makes sense on its own, but taken together, they create a feeling of instability. On a subconscious level, over-explaining signals a need to be understood. And when someone has to ask to be understood, their psychological position automatically lowers. This is not about right or wrong. It is about how the brain reads emotional authority, believing that more understanding will increase attraction. But attraction does not grow through information. It grows through a felt sense of stability. Say less. Let consistent behavior speak for you. Not coldness, but no longer defending your right to exist. Pattern 3. Attraction is highly sensitive to emotional self-control. A small change from her, slower replies, less warmth, and you react immediately. You check in. You analyze. Or worse, you assume meaning and adjust yourself. Attraction requires a sense of emotional safety. When your emotions swing sharply in response to small signals, the other person's nervous system feels tension, even if she cannot name it. Labeling self-control as fake or cold. In reality, self-control does not eliminate emotion. It regulates reaction. Observe before responding. Allow space to exist. Do not rush to fill it with emotion. If this pattern has ever confused you, tap like and keep watching. What do these 3 patterns have in common? None of them are dramatic. No one does anything obviously wrong. But all of them revolve around one invisible axis, your psychological position in the relationship. This is the Femina mind perspective, not judging based on a single action, but reading attraction through how 2 people adjust around each other. In the next section, we will go deeper into the patterns that cause many men to start rationalizing everything, even when, internally, the warning lights are already flashing. Pattern 4. Attraction reacts strongly to how you handle distance. There are periods when she gets busier, texts less, initiates less, and almost instinctively, you move forward to maintain the connection. You text more. You check in more. You try to fill the space. Attraction respects someone who does not panic in the face of distance. When you rush forward every time she pulls back, the subconscious mind registers. This person does not stay grounded without connection. Not because you are wrong, but because attraction does not respond well to imbalanced pacing, believing that distance is something that must be fixed immediately. When in reality, many moments of distance are simply unconscious tests of psychological position. Match distance with distance. Do not turn silence into a crisis. Observe whether she adjusts back on her own instead of forcing the rhythm. Pattern 5. Attraction declines when you place her emotions above your own ground. You repeatedly ask, "Are you okay? Did what I did upset you? I just want you to be happy." It sounds kind, but over time, you realize you are walking on eggshells, afraid of making a mistake, afraid of losing ground. Attraction needs a solid axis, someone who has their own ground, their own emotional center, their own boundaries. When you prioritize her emotional state over your own stability, you unknowingly send the signal, "My state depends on how you feel," and attraction does not grow inside that dependency. Confusing love with self-sacrifice. Believing that if you give enough, understand enough, endure enough, attraction will return. In reality, the opposite happens. Hold boundaries without argument, no long explanations, no need to prove that you are a good person. Just do not abandon your own ground. What is worth noticing here is this. None of these patterns say that she is bad, manipulative, or taking advantage of you. They all point to one thing. Attraction is extremely sensitive to psychological position, and that position is expressed through very small reactions. This is why Femina mind consistently emphasizes not learning tactics, not controlling outcomes, but recognizing where you are standing inside the dynamic. If one of these patterns made you think, "I have done this before and I never understood why things slowly shifted," leave a simple comment. This pattern feels familiar. In the next section, we will move into deeper patterns, where the real danger no longer lies in her behavior, but in how men rationalize everything to avoid facing the truth. At this point, you might not feel shocked, just quietly unsettled. Not because something obvious happened, but because something subtle no longer feels aligned. There's a sense that the dynamic has shifted, even though no clear line was crossed, and that ambiguity often leaves you questioning your own perception. That hesitation is understandable. Attraction rarely disappears in a dramatic moment. Most of the time, nothing looks wrong when viewed in isolation. Each interaction can still be explained, softened, or rationalized away. But attraction doesn't operate on individual moments. It moves through patterns and momentum, like a temperature that rises 1 degree at a time, unnoticed until the room feels heavy. Or like background noise you stop noticing consciously, yet it slowly drains your focus and energy. The connection hasn't vanished. It's simply no longer pulling in the same direction. What matters here isn't whether effort still exists. It's whether you've begun compensating for a lack of response. When someone repeatedly has to initiate, adjust, or lower their presence just to maintain balance, that ongoing self-correction becomes information in itself. And from here, the dynamic grows more consequential. The patterns ahead don't just affect attraction, they shape how much of yourself you quietly set aside to keep things stable. This is where many people begin losing ground without realizing they've stepped back. If this feeling resonates, stay with the next part. Pattern 6. You constantly explain her changes for her. She asks fewer questions, shows less curiosity about your life, responds with less emotional engagement. But instead of checking in with yourself, you answer on her behalf. She is probably stressed. Everyone goes through phases like this. I should not make a big deal out of it. It is like noticing a small crack in the wall, but instead of checking the foundation, you hang more pictures so you do not have to see it. Every time you explain things away, you numb your internal compass. You stop reading signals and start blurring them. Attraction does not collapse at this point, but self-respect slowly wears down. Pattern 7. You are more afraid of resetting boundaries than of losing yourself. You hesitate to voice what feels off for you, not because you do not know, but because you are afraid of disrupting the fragile balance you have. You tell yourself, do not push it. Keeping things calm is better. like walking across a bridge with visible cracks. You do not step firmly, not because the bridge is strong, but because you are afraid to learn the truth if it cannot hold your weight. Attraction does not disappear because you have boundaries. It disappears when you are no longer willing to stand on your own boundaries. Pattern 8. You trade clarity for vague hope. The relationship is not bad, but it is not clear either. It does not move forward. It does not end. You live in a state of waiting for her to initiate again, waiting for a sign, waiting for the old feeling to return. Like driving through thick fog without slowing down, just hoping the fog will clear on its own. It is not that you are being patient. It is that you put your life on pause to preserve a possibility. Attraction does not thrive in that suspended space. What do these deeper patterns have in common? None of them are loud. No one is clearly at fault, but each one requires you to ignore your intuition, to convince yourself that everything is fine, even when, internally, you are no longer standing upright. This is where many men feel uncomfortable watching, because they recognize themselves. And this is also where Femina mind places a very different emphasis. The issue is not whether she still feels attraction. The issue is whether you still respect your own internal signals. When you keep rationalizing, avoiding boundaries, and living in waiting mode, the first thing you lose is not her, but the stable axis inside yourself. If you are at this stage, one thing needs to be said clearly: you are not alone. Many men wake up right here, not because the relationship collapses, but because they no longer recognize themselves inside it. If what you are hearing makes you go quiet for a moment, consider subscribing to the channel. Not to get quick answers, but to keep your internal compass from going offline. In the final section, we will talk about the strongest pattern of all, where everything stops revolving around her attraction and starts revolving around your decision. Keep trying, or know when to stop. Pattern 9. Trying a little longer turns into a habit, not a choice. You no longer ask, is this relationship healthy? You only ask, how much longer should I try? You stay because of memories, because of potential, because of the version of the relationship that could exist, not the one that actually does. Trying is not wrong, but trying after you have already lost your footing is no longer love. It is avoidance. It is like standing in front of a door that is not locked, but you keep knocking day after day because you are afraid that stepping through means accepting a different truth. Attraction is not something you can save by adding more effort, and self-respect is not something you can keep while constantly negotiating with what makes you feel uneasy. The most mature moment in a relationship is not when you try harder. It is when you realize, I can still love, but I will not trade away my respect for myself. This is not a call to leave, and it is not a judgment for staying. It is an invitation to stand in the right place. When you stop chasing her signals and start listening to your own, something very subtle but powerful happens. You speak less, but with more clarity. You react more slowly, but with more certainty. You no longer need an outcome to feel okay. And at this point, attraction no longer drags you blindly. You place yourself in a position where attraction, if it still exists, must recalibrate itself. That is the core spirit of Femina mind. No manipulation, no bitterness, no self-deception. Femina mind helps you stay grounded in relationships, so no matter how things turn out, you walk away with your dignity intact. A question for reflection, no need to answer right away. If today you stopped trying to be chosen, who would you be left with? Not in her eyes, but in your own definition. A man can stay because he chooses to, and he can also leave because of self-respect. Both are strong when done consciously. If this video helped you name something you have felt for a long time, leave a comment. No long explanation needed. Just one line is enough. And if you want to continue these quiet, slow, non-judgmental conversations, subscribe to Femina Mind, not to find quick answers, but to keep your inner compass working. There is a very common misunderstanding that keeps many men stuck longer than necessary, that leaving means you lost, and that not trying harder means you did not love enough. Reality is the opposite. At a certain point, knowing when to stop is not impatience. It is the first sign of a man who has returned to his center. Attraction can come and go, emotions can change. But self-respect, once it has been worn down for too long, is very difficult to rebuild unless you actively stop the process. What Femina Mind emphasizes is not the outcome of a relationship, but your inner posture while you are inside it. Are you staying because you choose to, or because you fear the emptiness that might follow if you leave? Are you trying because effort reflects your values, or because you hope that one day attraction will return to how it used to be? The difference looks small on the surface, but it is massive at a deeper level. When you are grounded, you do not need to announce boundaries with a hard voice. You do not need to apply pressure. You do not need to disappear to create an effect. You only need to stop doing the things that make you feel smaller. And here is the paradox. When you no longer need attraction to validate your worth, you finally stand in a position where attraction, if it still exists, can respond in a healthy way. If it does not, you are still okay, because you are no longer trading yourself to preserve a feeling. That is the ending Femina Mind always moves toward. Not turning men into skeptics, not turning women into targets of bitter analysis, but helping you leave every relationship with your back straight and your head held high. Not everyone needs to leave, but everyone needs to know this. You can leave without losing yourself. And this final question is not meant to be answered for anyone else. If today you chose to respect yourself completely, how much of this relationship would still be standing? If that question made you go quiet for a few seconds, leave a comment. Not to explain, but to acknowledge the moment you just faced yourself honestly. And if you want to continue conversations like this, slow, grounded, and free of judgment, stay with Femina Mind. And maybe at this point, the most important thing is no longer whether she is right or wrong. It is not about how attraction has changed or who started it first. What is really on the table now is a much simpler question. In this relationship, are you still respecting yourself or not? Not in what you say, but in how you stay, what you accept, and how you keep adjusting yourself day after day. Many people are taught that if you just try a little longer, everything will work out. That patience equals love. That endurance equals maturity. But there are moments when trying a little longer is no longer hope. It is simply a delay of a truth you are not yet ready to face. In those cases, leaving is not giving up. Sometimes, it is the very first moment you become truly clear with yourself. That is also where Femina Mind exists, not to teach you how to control someone or how to analyze every small behavior. Femina Mind is an observational framework. It helps you slow things down, react less, panic less. It is like a way to stay calm when emotions pull you too far, and like a compass that reminds you that self-respect is not something you use to threaten others. It is something you quietly keep for yourself. And maybe the question worth carrying with after this video is not, does she still love me? But rather, are you staying because of love or because you are afraid to face the truth if you stop? If you want, you can share your experience in the comments. Not to prove anything, just to put it out there for a moment. And if the perspective of Femina Mind helps you feel more grounded, more clear-headed, you can stay here and follow the channel. Not to be told where to go, but to keep reminding yourself that in the end, the power to choose has always been yours.